62% of employees say they experience moderate to high stress at work.
Wherever you are on that financial spectrum where you can't find $1,000 or whether you have got a large amount of wealth.
Almost half of all employees can't cover a sudden $1,000 expense.
It is reflecting the environment you're in, whether that's the global environment, the employment environment you're in. And the stats are clearly showing that every generation is feeling increasing levels of burnout.
Jobs which were once secure and fluffy and nice and all these things all of a sudden now turn a corner.
People are comparing themselves more because they've got access to social media. So there's this kind of hustle culture. There is the culture of excess, material excess, and we only see the people that are doing well often. You had a house, you had stability, all the trappings of something that was on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I even know people in the middle of Sydney working for huge companies on big six-figure salaries, and they still can't afford to buy a house.
So if you've got a poll for the last 10 years and you can see that chart going upwards, then we're charging upwards.
And that is all coming from the system that we're all in. But guess what? 99% of the people in the system do not like the system and are burnt out by the system.
15th annual ALFAC Pause Incorporated report, 72% of employees say they experience moderate to high stress at work.
So I suppose wherever you are on that financial spectrum where you can't find $1,000 or whether you have got a large amount of wealth, it is reflecting the environment you're in, whether that's the global environment, the employment environment you're in. Everything is more pressured.
Well, I think everything, first of all, I think each one of those aspects can be pulled out into different regions, right? So first of all, you people that can't afford $1,000 from a just disposable point of view, that is a particular demographic, probably needs a little bit, that probably needs more work on, or probably needs more help just on debt management. I can't remember what the last stat was, but the amount of credit that at the very least US consumers have got has only been increasing. So I think if you break all these things down, you've got different people, different employee types, different avatars that exist within them. But the key thing that I would take from that, what I was messaging you about earlier, is just on arrow point, uppy, uppy. Do you know what I mean? You're getting more and more people now, for various reasons, experiencing burnout at younger ages, earlier into their careers. Jobs which were once secure and fluffy and nice and all these things all of a sudden now turn a corner and just don't feel how they used to feel. And that's the thing that I pull out from it. It's like, at what point in all of this process do you wake up and smell the roses? When is enough enough? Because the boiling of the frog analogy is, and we're all frogs in some proverbial boiling water at some point, but as all these little things just creep in, what we're trying to at least mitigate is that day you wake up and you're like, this is shit, I've had enough.
Which does put stress on the employees to achieve that, and just the society in general, which is, we talked about it on one of our other calls, which is the notion of trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to keep up with the sort of material aspects of life. And to keep all that going at any one time, the stats are clearly showing that every generation, whether it's going from Gen X to Gen Y, millennials, and into sort of Gen Z and Gen A, every generation is feeling more and more increasingly under that kind of pressure, and therefore is feeling increasing levels of burnout.
Yeah, so we have been polling more. I mean, Mackenzie and I can't remember the other one, but at least this ALFAC, I'll say it right, this ALFAC report, that is the 15th report. So they've been doing that for at least 15 years. So I think there's enough data to show that it's legitimate. I'm just thinking of things we can discredit, like because we never used to poll. That just mean we see it more now. But if you've got a poll for the last 10 years and you can see that chart going upwards, then we're charting upwards. And I'm going to argue that almost everybody can feel that, because otherwise your standard MO is you work your ass off till you're in your 60s, 70s in some places, and then you retire. And that's been kind of been thrown out, or certainly challenged for quite some time now. But that this rise in micro retirements, mini retirements, I think is a understandable pop out from a society that is increasingly getting more and more stress and more burnout. And I can understand why more and more people are saying, look, I'm taking I suppose it's an adult gap year, isn't it? I'm taking 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and I'm doing something totally different. And I'd love to see as that starts to rise, I'd love to see how many of those people end up back where they used to work.
If you knew that you were on the trajectory to having some sort of retirement that enabled you to exist, then that was kind of your draw and your pull towards meaning. And you had a house and you had stability, all the trappings of something that was on high Maslow's hierarchy of needs that gave you that element of, okay, well, I'm doing okay in life. Nothing's perfect, but it's okay, right? And I think because of all these other factors now, because of this wage and cost of living gap, and the comparison to everything we do, and the knowledge that you're never going to, it's really difficult for people to buy a house. I even know people in the middle of Sydney working for huge companies on big six-figure salaries, and they still can't afford to buy a house, and they're living off credit. So the search for meaning within everyday life doesn't exist, and it's more and more difficult to be achieved. So you add that with what you were saying there in terms of mental health in the workplace and employers seeking growth over employee mental health and well-being. Everyone, you kind of stuck somewhere and thinking, well, what is the point, right? And living in Bali, where I do, and running another business here that I do, I'm seeing more and more families deciding to have that sabbatical, let's call it, and that's either negotiating with employees to be able to work abroad, and negotiating with employers to have literally a year off. I've seen that numerous times, or just literally quitting their job, usually from some form of illness or burnout, or just willingness to search for something else. And during that year, they are literally searching for more meaning in life.
And we always say this when we're looking at survive, strive, thrive, and we've really cleared the difference between survive and strive, that getting over that debt hurdle and chucking your money at things, trying to make it work, getting past that. And that barrier then between strive and thrive, which is realizing when is enough enough? Like, do you have enough?
There's no doubt in my mind that that's the case. And that is just closing that gap between what your fear is and what the reality of your situation is, and be able to start thinking differently about it a little bit, right, in terms of your own circumstances. And it's really important not to compare yourself to other people during that, because when you do that, so often you'll have half the people in your life that will say, wow, that's amazing, I wish I could do that. And half the people in life, you're going to say, you crazy, this is the most dangerous thing you could ever do. It's a completely terrible world out there, and all these terrible things are going to happen to you if you go to these far-flung countries, and you're going to lose your job, and that's crazy. And what are the kids going to do in terms of their education? Exactly. And that is all coming from the system that we're all in. But guess what? 99% of the people in the system do not like the system and are burnt out by the system. Go and do those things. And no one can really make you do that. You just need to kind of make that kind of a little bit of a leap of faith based on the fact that those upside metrics in terms of how you fulfilled in life are going to go up. You're going to get much more ROI. And sometimes, just literally from a practical level, I think it's looking at, like you say, how much money have you accumulated over time, and if you're just going to keep it for retirement. I'm so in such admiration for what you guys are doing, because we've been traveling for 18 months. He goes, I wish I'd done it, and I feel like we're doing it all wrong, because I now I've got way more money than I can ever spend in the rest of my life, and I don't have the time to do it, and my body won't allow me to do it. My body is failing me in this moment, and I'm ill because I've got burnt out, because I worked so hard, right?
But then, well, let me ask you a question. When's the best time to plant a tree? Don't tell me you don't know this parable. Is it a
Mm.
parable? Saying
Yeah, no, yeah, of course I do. Yeah, like if it's not if
10 years
it's
ago.
yesterday, but if it 10 years ago, but if
Yeah,
it's not 10 years ago, it's today,
it's
right?
today. Yeah. So when we look at fear, as I can imagine someone at, let's say, 45 thinking about this, going, yeah, well, I mean, if I'd have heard about this when I was in my 20s, I probably would have done, but I'm 45, but I'm 50, 55, 60, 70. And I remember when I was 20 and I first went traveling, the best people I met were older than me, 30s, 40s, 50s. And I think that now I spot someone the other day and, and they were like, "Oh, you're back in England?" And I said, "No, I'm in Mexico." And they went, "Traveling?" And I went, "Yeah." And they went, "You're still traveling?" not relating to the 20-year-old me, like just because we've been doing this for like 6 years. And I said, yeah. And he's like, why? And I went, well, I've got to be somewhere.
Mm.
So I just choose to be in different places. And they're like, do you not want to settle? And I was like, I think I am settled.
Next, isn't
I've
it?
not been inauthentic, but there's certain pieces that come through, and I suppose they're just more guarded at times. But that was the most relaxed I
Yeah.
felt anyway, and I felt it was the most fluid. And I'm also trying to think without overthinking. I'm also trying to think about sound bites. I'm trying to think about breaking stuff
Hmm.
up a little bit and having them see the real you in me, because there's the content we're talking about, there's the person that's listening
Yeah.
to it and what they take, the value, let's say. So there's the topic, the
Uh-huh.
value, and then there's the trust.
Well, I think the things to remember, stats are really good. Some sort of quote or philosophical quote, more philosophical a quote, and then personal experience, and then understanding of the subject, which
Hmm.
we have got, and then a personal experience or perspective, right? And if the thing that we get in, well, I know you get it from, I probably will in a moment as well, imposter syndrome, where someone, if we've got CEO of a big company and who the fuck are we to do it? Well, we're living the
Yeah,
life that they want to live. So we can't forget that, right? We've done what people are
yeah,
too scared to do. So that's what we need to anchor in our own personal experience. We don't give a fuck. This is how we thought about
yeah.
things. This is how we approached it. And guess what? We're living the life, right? And that's what we've got to do it. So a statistic or a scientific fact, a quote or a historical kind of figure that's a bit more
And
philosophical,
personal experience.
personal experience and personal perspective, yeah, and then a framework
Okay,
wraps it all
let's
together.
remember that then for the next call is just thinking of those things, and then always when we're talking, bringing those in.